Okay, good morning. We're here today for another COVID coffee with Positive Venture Group. So today we have Jeff Stoss and Jason Burke, who are both co-founders. Jason, the CEO, and Jeff, the COO. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining. And also today, Tyler Nelson, who's the Chief Growth Officer at PVG. And how many weeks or months are you into the new gig, Tyler?
Oh, I think I'm just under about 70 days. So
okay, well, welcome. But even wetter feet, I guess Hillary now, she's literally 5 days in the role of sales and marketing manager, right, Hillary? So good morning. Thanks for making the time.
Morning. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we'll kick it straight off, basically. And Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Positive Venture Group and maybe what differentiates the team from some of the other groups out there that offer, similar type services?
Yeah, more than happy to. And thanks, Oliver, for the opportunity to join you today. I think that these COVID coffees are a great way to kind of share some messaging in a very different time than most companies and most people have ever seen in their lifetime. So I applaud the effort on the COVID coffees. Positive Venture Group, we founded about 5.5 years ago. It might even be almost 6 now. I'm losing track of months here as COVID goes on. Really with kind of a fundamental idea that we wanted to bring best practices from enterprise class companies and enable growth stage companies. That was kind of the fundamental premise. My background is I was Chief Financial Officer of Cognos when IBM came in and took over, and then was Chief Financial Officer of the Business Analytics Division of IBM for a couple of years before going and kind of pursuing that same role down in Boston with Avid Technologies in the digital media space, and then back here with MossAid, which we rebranded to Conversant as I switched over to the COO role. All these companies were bigger companies. They were all 250 million of revenue up to 2 billion of revenue. They were from a couple of hundred employees to 4,500 employees. Now, if you count all of IBM, that was the division within IBM. Count all of IBM, it's like 100,000 employees. But really, a lot of these companies were deploying kind of different best practices, whether it was around finance, operations, and a bunch of different areas. They learning through those companies how to enable larger teams to work together to be successful was a really big part of the learning that came out of that. So when I left Conversant, Jeff and I hooked up and we started talking. He had been in a lot of these places with me. He'd done a lot of things on his own as well. And both of us had come from a CFO background. So the idea was, well, what if we take these great things that we learned about the best-in-class finance functions and bring them down to the level of a growth stage company? So the idea is people, the old saying, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. All of these companies that are growth stage, high potential companies want to be that big company. So how can they affordably dress for the job that they want? And we went out and we figured, okay, we can do this just by being CFOs. So we're going to create this network of CFOs. That's where we're going to start. But we're going to be different than other CFOs because we are chief finance officers, not chief accounting officers, not chief compliance officers. When you think about a lot of the different fractional CFOs out there, they really play that more accounting and compliance role. The chief finance officer needs to ensure that the company has the financing it needs to be successful. And we differentiate a little bit on that front in terms of our approach. So we documented that approach in a CFO process. That was kind of our first differentiator in terms of how we approach things. But then we realized as we started working with companies that being a CFO only works if you have all the other things taken care of. You need to have the accounting and the bookkeeping and a whole bunch of things done properly. So we looked at models with a bookkeeper, and there was too big of a gap in terms of the information we required without somebody in between. We looked at a model where we said, okay, what if we bring in a controller to kind of support this? And from a cost perspective, that controller was doing things that in a large organization would be done at a much lower cost base. So we said, okay, well, how did we do this back here? And we looked at what an enterprise finance function had. And they had specialist people at various roles and various levels. They had, with a high level of expertise, they had best-in-class financial systems, and they had really excellent processes. So what we decided to do, which was a little bit different, instead of just building a bookkeeping business or building an accounting business, we said, well, why don't we take that enterprise finance function? No growth stage company can afford to create all that themselves. We'll create it for you, and we'll license you a slice per month. So basically, you get the amount of a controller you need, the amount of FP&A support you need. Your transaction processing is done by payroll specialists, accounts payable specialists, etc. We needed to enable, so our approach is a little differentiated on that front, that we're leveraging the economy of scale of a large finance organization and bringing that for the first time to growth stage companies. Then we said, okay, well, to get a finance function to work together, you can't do that on QuickBooks, you can't do that on Xero, you can't do that on Wave. Those are software packages that are ledger systems. They're meant for a one-to-one relationship, a bookkeeper to a system, one accountant to one system. They're not enabled to get teams to work together, provide information across teams, and they don't have the capability to extend beyond finance into the rest of the organization. So we went through a system selection, and we went down the path of looking at things like Workday, things like Microsoft Dynamics, Microsoft Navision, MySAP, a whole bunch of different software packages, and ultimately selected NetSuite, which we believe is the world leader from a cloud ERP perspective. It was bought subsequent to us choosing NetSuite. They were bought by Oracle, so it's now Oracle NetSuite to get the branding correct on that. And we embrace that as the tool we'd use to bring growth stage companies onto an ERP platform that allows them to grow. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to create an infrastructure that allows companies to scale the way they want. People want to know, like, Shopify is on NetSuite. Everybody in Ottawa knows Shopify, right? So again, that idea of dressing for the job you want, we can give them NetSuite at a similar cost to like a QuickBooks Enterprise, except you're on a real ERP that will scale with you to wherever you're able to take your business to. So when I think about kind of the differentiators that over the last 6 years, it started with the CFO process. That was number one. It was our approach to finance outsource, which was more of leveraging the capability of an enterprise scale finance function, which allows us to be cost effective. And then we've embraced and deployed best in class information systems that, again, are differentiated from a lot of the other folks out there who are more on a ledger system than an ERP or a business management system, the way that we are. So I might have went on too long about who Positive Venture Group is and what we've done over the last 5 years, but I figured I'd give a little bit of the story in terms of kind of how we've evolved over time. We've grown from Jeff and I at the beginning to about 50, 55 people now in terms of that enterprise finance function. That also leads into some of the conversations about the different locations that we've worked out of and our more recent decisions that we've made in terms of our staffing and capability. From a client perspective, I think we've, and Jeff, you can keep me honest, I think we've worked with more than 120 clients over that period of time. We're currently working with around 60 clients, 65 clients. And again, mostly growth stage technology companies or folks that have more complexity than just a single entity, simple accounting need. They're looking for something a little bit more on the finance side.
No, I appreciate that. That's a really in-depth understanding of what PVG do. So I guess it's literally a one-stop shop for high growth companies, but the differentiator obviously also being your ability to open doors for enterprise opportunities for these high growth companies, correct?
Yeah, absolutely right. And one of the things that we take pride in is, and it's kind of that differentiation that I talked about before, is a chief finance officer versus a chief accounting or chief compliance officer. There's a lot of people who call themselves CFOs. We've helped the clients that we work with raise over $500 million in the last 5 years. Wow. So in terms of helping them fund the business that they're trying to drive and they're trying to grow, we take a little bit of a different approach to help them reach their goals and objectives.
Oh, that's great. Appreciate that. So 5 years in, COVID hits. So tell me how that pandemic affected, well, I guess your clients, number one, but how did you guys, how did the team step up to help guide and navigate your clients through the COVID storm. Jeff, maybe I'll talk to you quickly about the funding part of it.
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe what I'll start with, I guess, the first thoughts, like Jason referred to our enterprise finance functions, we were able to turn immediately to some of the best practices that we leverage every day. I mean, we are remote. We would have the odd occasional meetings face to face with our clients, but we've been built for the cloud and for remote communication since day one. But part of our enterprise finance function is that we run weekly cash flow reporting and forecasting meetings. We have a best practice that we run a rolling plan, a quarterly rolling plan process. So at any point in time, our clients were basically enabled and they were funding ready, whether that was for a government grant application, whether that was a debt financing, whether that was an equity round. Now, of course, we try to run that quarterly. Of course, when you throw a pandemic into the mix, well, maybe that quarter we've got to do more than one rolling plan. But we were ready to go, and our clients needed to figure out different ways of modeling. For some of them, it was a tweak, a variation on their existing plan. Government programs were rolling out every single day. We were not the only ones in this world. In fact, we collaborated with some of the other kind of like-minded organizations in this city to share best practices, to share resources, and to in fact get some of those best ideas out to help the ecosystem. We're lucky enough, as well as part of our process, that we have a non-dilutive funding expert. In addition, within that money that Jason mentioned, we've also helped companies to minimize their dilution over the years and be able to access different government funding programs that were a natural fit for their organization. So when all these programs started to roll out and we were all drinking from a fire hydrant like everybody else, trying to learn how they were changing every day and new programs that were rolling out, we jumped right onto it. We had some folks that were even fresher into their roles than Hillary that jumped in right away, doing research, getting communications out to our clients, getting best practices out there for them, and we jumped in. So, to date, what we've seen this week's numbers, we started approaching it like another metric in our business. We've helped companies access over 8.6 million of pandemic related relief.
Oh, wow.
In terms of helping them to compile the numbers that they need, identify programs which were a natural fit, and help them with submitting those applications. So we've seen some great successes with IRAP. For example, they've had a couple of different programs that have been of great benefit to our clients. FedDev Ontario with their RRRF program has lately been something that has truly moved the needle in some companies' organizations. And then, of course, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, which at first blush seemed like a really simple thing. Let's go get 75% of your money back. And then, a 10-page list of FAQs came out. And that didn't initially apply to growth stage companies like we were working with. So basically, we got stuck in. We did the work alongside our clients. Some of them needed to pivot more strongly. Others flourished during this moment in time. Some unfortunately had to close down or kind of rationalize. We've got to simplify our worlds right now until we figure out what we do next. But we're quite happy to say that most of them have in fact they stabilized and are starting to grow now, and some have in fact done even better than that.
No, that 8.4 million, that's a phenomenal amount in terms of money flowing back into the entrepreneurial community here in Ottawa. And I love the fact that you use the word collaborative in terms of when you were troubleshooting and obviously leveraging other peers within the industry, best professionals in certain classes to be able to then flow or pass that information back to your client base. Because we're all in this together and we'll survive this together. So aside from the emergency funding part and the federal government money, so any of your clients looking to raise money privately to continue their growth transformation through the pandemic?
Yeah, I'll chime in with one great example, and then Jason and Tyler can weigh in with some of the clients that they've helped. But one of our clients, massive, it's a large digital media file transfer service. It's a pay-as-you-go model, really disruptive. You've got a multi-terabyte file that you need to send. You just enter a credit card detail and fire it off, and off you go. You can leverage public clouds to basically send your files and hit your delivery deadlines. Well, the pandemic hit, and CEO Greg Wood and I were actually in Toronto to go pitch to the Keiretsu audience that day as part of a seed fundraising round. We got a notification on an alert just after midnight saying, don't come in, the entire city of Toronto is shutting down because there were COVID cases coming out of the Mining and Metals Conference. And
Wow.
so we traveled to Toronto. Some poor other company had just flown in from Vancouver to do a virtual pitch too, so I felt a little bit worse for them. But we pitched remotely that day, and we never, in fact, really returned to the office except to, collect our belongings and go work from home. It forced a little bit of delay in the fundraising round, but what we saw very quickly, they were one of those companies that has in fact flourished. They have grown. There's more collaboration of video professionals working together around the globe, needing to meet deadlines, and Massive was there to kind of meet that charge. So we actually closed an oversubscribed seed fundraising round in June. Certainly for a few weeks there when markets turned, maybe it caused a pause, but there is money there. There are deals to be had. And in fact, the value proposition for some of our clients and folks in the ecosystem has in fact increased through the pandemic.
That's great news.
And maybe I can chime in. I kind of separate the groups of our clients into a few different. There were some that had fundraising rounds that were well underway heading into the pandemic. And what they saw was a little bit of a slowdown, but were able to complete it. We had one company that we work with, one of our clients at West, who closed a $52 million B round. So that's on the high end of some of the really interesting things that we saw. But that was in flight before the pandemic, and all that would have happened was slight slowdowns on the way to getting that closed. We've got a whole group of companies who actually had to think about this more from a cash flow perspective. They actually took a step back because, as Jeff was talking about, we work with them very closely. We look at cash flows on a weekly basis. We do quarterly rolling plans. And we said, okay, well, if funding does end up being impacted during this period, what do we need to do to extend our runway as far as we can so that we can manage through this? We've got companies who actually did that so successfully that all of a sudden they came out of the venture realm and became very attractive to private equity and very attractive to lenders because they were able to actually turn EBITDA positive in terms of their approach to things. So where they're a high growth SaaS company that is at a certain stage, but they're investing a ton in sales and marketing, they reduce some of that investment, still continue to grow at a slower rate, but move to EBITDA positive. We were able to help them secure $4 million worth of a debt facility, and then also start getting interest from a lot of different private equity firms along the way by supporting them through that. We've got other companies who actually turned back into their investor base. So for example, they had early round investors, and they said they had warrants attached to that. And they said, you know what? We're going to go back to our investors who really believe in us. We've been able to actually refocus our business during COVID and drive a tremendous amount of value creation from a traction perspective in terms of partnerships, in terms of customer signings and other things. So instead of trying to do another round right now in the midst of COVID, we'll go back to our investors and we'll see if they're willing to exercise their warrants. They raised $3.8 million. So a really interesting raise on that front. We've got some companies that are working on safes. We've got a lot of companies that also then, as Jeff talked about, the group of companies that really needed to grind through this and really looked at kind of the COVID funding alternatives as lifelines that help them to be successful. But in general, and Tyler can probably speak to kind of the general market a little bit more in and around the funding and kind of some views, but there is a lot of money still out there. People are just being a little bit more cautious and careful with how they're deploying it. The other thing that's heated up like crazy is M&A. And there's a lot of M&A activity. There's a lot of M&A. You look at kind of some of the recent announcements, even yesterday, Slack being acquired by Salesforce. That's happening on a microcosm basis here in Ottawa. I don't know, Tyler, if you want to kind of speak to the overall capital markets and kind of that area of things.
Yeah, I think just maybe we've been looking back, right, in your comments and Jeff's comments over the last year. I think looking forward, we're seeing actually, I think 2021 is going to be a really robust market for new financings for growth stage businesses. There's a lot of activity. Certainly M&A is picking up. I think there's a lot of value buyers in the market right now looking for opportunities to fill revenue and roadmap gaps through tuck-in acquisitions. There's a lot of activity. And, you know, one of the things that COVID has accelerated, certainly Canada was, Ottawa specifically was experiencing that. But if you look across the kind of seed stage, pre-seed, and A-round activity across kind of Waterloo, Ottawa, Vancouver, Toronto, and Ottawa is now the second largest market for tech in the country, right? So pretty remarkable that we've crept up over the last 2 or 3 years to the number 2 spot. I think we'll be challenging for number 1 in the coming year or two. But what COVID sped up is it's broken the barriers for regional kind of investment, in, as in, you know, folks out of you know, the EU are looking for deals in Ottawa, venture firms, private equity and growth firms. Folks out of Latin America are aggressively looking for deals in the marketplace. So it's, you know, people don't have to get on planes to jump on a call and meet with founding teams and to listen to a pitch. And it's really kind of very quickly accelerating the market opportunity for Ottawa-based or Canadian-based companies to reach investors that might have been out of reach or perceived to be out of reach before. So I think 2021 is going to be a really strong year from, you know, the PVG perspective. One of the things that Jason and Jeff, and that's really why I'm here, chose to do is to look forward and kind of expand the advisory role that PVG plays along kind of pre-transaction readiness, whether that's an M&A transaction, whether it's a funding event. It's recognizing that funding and transaction readiness is a whole business activity. And so, you know, we're seeing a lot of clients that are engaging us now to help ready their business for a funding event. And that's really a holistic process. And so really excited about those opportunities. I think maybe the last comment, Jason, is the increasing traction and level of kind of partnerships and alliances that we're building with private equity and venture firms, incubators and accelerators who are turning to us because we are an easy decision introduction for those growth stage portfolio companies that they have, right? So, you know, finance is becoming a really complex, the finance practice is becoming increasingly complex. Investors are becoming more demanding of growth stage businesses to have highly professional and highly instrumented finance practices, which, you know, really, you know, are only affordable and scalable with the PVG FAST model, the outsourced model. And so, you know, our outlook for next year is just phenomenal. I think we're as busy as this business historically has ever been, and it's going to be a great year.
That's great to hear some of those insights going into 2021. So let's talk about something else then, Tyler, Jeff, and Jason, about something that COVID has also accelerated, which is the office space, and talk about the work from home and all the other stuff we love or don't love to hear about going digital and going virtual. So tell us a little bit more about the evolution of the office space from a PVG perspective. And maybe I'll share my screen right now and we can talk about maybe this will be the first, I guess, real home for you guys in Ottawa. And I'll get it up if you can see this on full mode so everyone can see it. But talk to me about your first home over on Parkdale in the former fire station. Can you all see that?
Yes, you can.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually had, and it's interesting when we show our other space later, we might see as we go down the hallways, we might see some meeting room names of some other places that we called home beforehand. So in the early days, it was coffee shops, it was sharing space at a client site, it was a storage locker place, right? So it was like every good startup, we were meeting where we could. But this truly was our first great home at 424 Parkdale. It's an iconic building. Fantastic neighborhood. We enjoyed this very much. I think it took our company culture to a whole other level when we were able to, to work there and collaborate in that space with nice access to neighborhood, restaurants and all those kind of facilities that we would need. I think we had hoped that we were going to be there through the full lease that we had arranged. We didn't know that growth would hit us quite at the pace that it did. And in fact, what were we, about 12 months in, when we realized that we had to either start stacking people on top of each other or we had to find another solution. So you'll see some of our original almost look like a bit of a crayon box, from the past, but we added some color and some light to a really iconic building. It was a fantastic space for us to grow and build more of a company culture. But very soon after, we had to start planning for the incredible people growth that we had back in a time when we felt that our path to grow was like many other companies. You find a space, you build your team, and you try to make that space as productive and collaborative as possible. So I guess we find ourselves with this opportunity where we are looking to sublet this space for the remainder of its lease. But yeah, it was a great space.
Yeah, no, lots of cool opportunities for Parkdale, including free parking, branding, short-term sublease, and just a cool neighborhood. So then we flip, then we evolve and we grow. So PVG grows, and you guys take then a new space, and this is a little further east, a little bit larger. But this is now your current home. So tell me a little bit more about why you chose the building, and then following on to that afterwards, maybe as COVID hit, your ultimate decision then to go digital, because this space is available, it's brand new, it's such a cool space. So why don't you tell our networks all about this space as I navigate through this virtual tour, so to speak.
Well, I mean, I think so. Some great thanks here also goes to Rachel Minchell, who's with Relogix now. So another great company in the city that's flourishing during this time. But she helped really spearhead helping design this space so that it was collaborative and not your stuffy old school, 1980s accounting or law office. So we made sure that, we wanted to make sure that there was plenty of space for our team in various sizes to have breakout rooms to kind of meet in either management and employee one-on-one meetings, group settings, or larger meetings if we were bringing clients or other outside advisors into our space. But our main working area, as you can see, was completely open. Years ago, I worked in an environment like this, a shared service center in Amsterdam with Cognos. That was a bright and open space, and I learned from that experience that finance folks are able to work and be productive, working in a real team-like manner in this kind of an open environment, as long as you do give them those appropriate spaces for them to make one-on-one calls, to do smaller team meetings, for them to meet with clients if clients came to our office. So that's
these breakout rooms you see here, right, Jeff? All these rooms are obviously all readily available on the interior of the space, right, for that exact reason.
Exactly, and of various sizes and degrees. And as we move into the space even further, we have telephone rooms, so an individual or two could go in and take a conference call. There's extra, sound control in those rooms so that you're not, in fact, disrupting others that are outside.
Sorry, that was a storage closet right there.
Oh yeah, everybody's got a. That's the exciting part of the tour, the storage closet. But even sort of in a diverse workforce,
those are telephone rooms,
we wanted to make sure as well that some of our folks that had times of the day that they needed to be alone for prayer, that we had a space for them as well, that they wouldn't have to just go find a space to hide in Saint Laurent Mall. It provided us room to accommodate all of that with nice, views of the Gatineaus and towards Parliament Hill.
Sweeping views, right, Jeff? I mean, it's such amazing natural light. It basically wraps around the three sides of the space right there. I think this is the west. Yeah, this is the west facing window, but it's such a beautiful, bright space. You guys did an absolutely amazing job right there.
Yeah, and just building in, just in terms of when we moved to the location, which is at 1400 Saint Laurent, we were looking for something that would give us some of the things that we had. We had access to shopping and food and restaurants and other things at Parkdale. We do have the mall right next door that gives us access to a lot of that. We're literally across the street from the Via Rail station. It's built right on the LRT line and close to transit. And it's also so easy for our folks to get there. Like, we've got a lot of folks who use public transit to get to the office. So you needed to have something that was really, really accessible for folks on that front. And just a quick drive up Riverside to go towards the airport and stuff like that. So easy way to get in and out, whether it's planes, trains, or automobiles, to get to the office, which was critical for us as we were going out to clients, as we had people coming in from all parts of the city. It's right on the highway, which is great for people who are commuting from cars. It's right on the LRT and the train and the bus lines for people who are looking for transit that way. You are close to being able to do cross-city or cross-country travel from an airport and a train station perspective. It really was a great location for us in terms of trying to make this as accessible as possible to people from all over the city.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's